Hi, I'm Dennis Phillips, and welcome to Everyday Reloading and Shooting. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone back through my reloading journal and I've made a list of my best loads for various 223 bullets, and I keep records of all of my results at the range. What I have done is I have written down, and here's a list of the various bullets, powders, loads, and velocities that I've shot in order to achieve these loads. And so then I have averaged those, and I've come up with an average velocity for each of those best loads. And here's a list of those you can see. So for 75 grain boat tail hollow points, for example, the average velocity for my best loads there was 2576. And for the ELD match, the average velocity for my best loads there was 2,594 feet per second. So what I have done is I have looked at the various powders that I have, and I've calculated a charge weight for that average velocity for each of those powders. So for the 73 grain ELD match, for example, and here's a picture of that, for CFE 223, my charge weight is going to be 24 grains. For Varget, 23 and a half. For Accurate, 2460, 22.4. The IMR 3031 is 21.2, and H335 is 21 grains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load these 5 powders at those charge weights to achieve what was the average velocity for my best loads that I've recorded so far. And I'm going to shoot these loads with these 5 powders for comparison. And that may give me an idea of which powder performs best at that particular velocity or charge weight. But it's just an interesting study, since that was the average velocity for my best charge weights. That's where I'm going to start, and I'm going to check that with each of the powders that I own. Okay, I'm going to be loading rounds with 5 different powders: CFE 223, Varget, Accurate 2460, IMR 3031, and H335. I'm loading these so that each charge produces 2,600 feet of velocity per the manual. So I'm starting off with the CFE 223 at 24 grains of powder. I've got the dispenser set to where it's throwing exactly 24 grains. So I'm going to go ahead and load these. I'm going to load 5 barrel warmers, and then I'm going to load 10 at that charge weight. And this is throwing so accurately, I'm going to do away with the funnel and just load directly into the case. Yep, dead on zero, 24 grains. The Varget powder is a stick powder, and you can't dispense that directly into the case because it doesn't meter very evenly. So I'm having to dispense a charge, weigh it on the scale, and use the powder trickler to bring it up to 0 on the scale. And I'm using my stand with the iPhone to be able to see the needle. So I'm going to have to trickle every one of these individually. Some of the other powders, like the 2460 and the 335, should be okay, but this and the IMR 3031, I'm going to have to use the trickler because those are both stick powders and really hard to meter. So I lay out my bullets on a towel so they don't roll off the table, and I turn these all the same way to make them easy to pick up so I don't have to fumble around with them, accidentally drop one. I'm a grinner, and I'm a lover, and I'm a sinner. Play my music in the sun. I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker. I sure don't want to hurt no one. These are seated at 2 1/4. $2.25 and 1/1000. So we're going to go with that. Real love your peaches, wanna shake your tree. No extra charge for the singing, ladies and germs. There we are, 50 rounds plus 5 barrel warmers to warm up the barrel and sight in the scope. 24 grains of CFE 223, 23.5 grains of Varget, 22.4 grains of accurate 2460, 21.2 grains of IMR 3031, and 21 grains of H335. Now it's time to take them out and shoot them and see how they do. Due to technical difficulties, as they say, when I was recording my shooting at the range, the sound didn't pick up. This microphone has a solid green light when it's connected to the sound, and it was solid and showed connected, but it didn't pick up. So normally I give like an introduction at the beginning of my shooting, and then I follow up with a quick review of the target afterwards. And so I'm going to forego those today. I will show you the shooting, just so you know that it's me doing the shooting and reeling in the target. But then as far as commentary, I'm going to make another video here and talk about the results. Okay, so I'm testing 5 different powders with the 73 ELD match bullet, and this is based on an average of the velocities that I have shot with this particular round, and that averaged 2,594 feet per second, but we're going to go with 2,600 because there was data in the loading manual, and if you were to drop it 1/10 of a grain, it would probably throw it off more than that 6 feet per second. Plus, most people consider a 6 foot per second standard deviation to be pretty good with hand loads. So anyway, 8 out of 10 of these groups were under an inch. And really 9 out of 10, because this was my warming group that I shot. I used this to get a baseline for where the bullets are hitting, and these were shooting high and to the right, and so I moved the scope 1 click to the left and 2 clicks down. The bottom of these circles is my aiming point, and so I don't want to destroy my aiming point, so I intentionally want the bullets to shoot low. So this was my barrel warming shot, and I had a group with an extreme spread of 0.57 inches and the best 4 out of 5 at 0.40 inches. And this was with the CFE 223 at 24 grains. I loaded those first, so I just went ahead and loaded 4 barrel warming shots, or I guess you could call those fouling shots, to get the barrel kind of primed and ready to shoot. So the first powder up was the CFE 223. From the warming group, I adjusted the scope 1 click to the left and 2 clicks down, and it was still shooting here. That was pretty much right on my point of aim and grouping slightly to the right, but I had an extreme spread of 0.64 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.62. I adjusted that, since it was hitting here, I adjusted that 1 additional click down. And here I shot an extreme spread of 0.97 with a best 4 out of 5 at 0.68. And this flyer here, most of these were grouping about an inch below. I've drawn a horizontal line here representing the center of the group. And this might should have been a little bit higher because of this flyer. But in any event, this horizontal line is supposed to represent the center of the cluster. Well, overall, these shot a 0.81 extreme spread average and a 0.65 best 4 out of 5. And if you've watched me for any length of time, you know that what I like to do is I average the extreme spread and the best 4 out of 5, and that gives me a score. That tells me how that group did. So moving on to Varget powder, I'm still shooting, centering the groups about an inch below target, maybe a little less, and I had an extreme spread of 0.81 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.78. On the second group that I shot at that charge weight, I had an extreme spread of 0.73 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.71. So that averaged 0.77 extreme, 0.75 best 4 out of 5 for a score of 76. When I got to the accurate 2460, we're shooting at 22.4 grains. I had an extreme spread of 0.98 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.76. The second group that I shot at that charge weight shot an extreme spread of 88 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.50. And again, as you can see, these are still centering pretty much horizontally about an inch below the aiming point. Well, those two groups gave me an extreme spread of 9.3 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.63 with a score of 78. When I got to the IMR 3031, I really expected this to be the best powder of all, and it did shoot the best group, which was a 0.57. Again, we're centering, in this case, a little bit below, an inch below the aiming point. But our best group here of the day was IMR 3031 powder at 21.2 grains with an extreme spread of 0.57 inches and a best 4 out of 5, look at that, at 0.38. The thing that frustrates me and amazes me about this hobby or sport, whatever you want to call it, is that you can shoot a group like that with one load, and then in the second group, you can have one of your worst groups of the day, which had an extreme spread of 1.13 and a best 4 out of 5 at 106. But you see these are still centered about an inch below the aiming point. And then you average those two together, and you've got an extreme spread average of 0.85 and a best 4 out of 5 average at 0.72 and a score of 79. But again, that first group was the best group of the day. Not sure why these were so spread out. This is not due to just a single flyer. This was a group that was actually spread out pretty well. Then we get to the Hodgson's H335. We're still shooting an inch below the aiming point, and we had a extreme spread of 0.88 and a best 4 out of 5 at 0.64. And again, just like with the IMR 3031, the second group was far worse. It was 1.49 with the best 4 out of 5 at 1.29. And oddly, it's still the group. If you look at the spread of this group and you find the center of that group, it's right in here. So they're still centering about an inch below that aiming point. But yet here I had 3 shots low and 2 shots high. So these 2 shots right here are the flyers that threw it off, because that's probably about where it should have been grouping right there had I been a better shooter. And then we have an extreme spread of 1.19 with a best 4 out of 5 at 0.97 and a group average of 108. So going back over these, the CFE 223 actually performed the best. It had a score of 73. Varget had a score of 76. Accurate 2460 had a score of 78. IMR 3031 had a score of 79. And H335 had a score of 108. The other thing that's odd about that is you notice that the score goes from lowest to highest in that exact order. But if you look at the charge weights, we go from highest to lowest at 24, 23.5, 22.4, 21.2, and 21. So as the charge weights go from highest to lowest, the score on our groups go from lowest to highest. So these are all supposed to be shooting at that 2,600 foot per second with the 73 grain ELD match bullet. So anyway, those are my results from the range today. I hope you found this interesting. Maybe you found a load in here that you can develop. I think this H335 has potential, and it may just very well be that 2,600 feet per second is not its preferred velocity. So I might could go a little bit higher on this 21 grains and maybe get a tighter grouping. So that remains to be seen. Now, I am very pleased that with all of these, 8 out of 10 of these groups were under an inch. And really, you could say it was 9 out of 11 groups that were under an inch if you throw in the warming group that I shot. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found something that will be beneficial to you. If so, please leave a comment, or if you've got a load of your own that you've developed that works well, please share that below. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.